Hello. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We're super excited about our speakers. Did someone shush me? Was that my brother? Just kidding. So I don't like to stand still. That's going to bug me. Okay. There. Restart, right? Where's Tisha? Okay, so thank you so much for coming tonight. This event is really, really special to me and has a really special place in all of our hearts that are behind Ideas Ignited. So what is Ideas Ignited? Ideas Ignited is a nonprofit organization that really, at its heart, supports teachers. And we support teachers infusing creativity into their classrooms. And we do that in a couple of ways. But the most important way is that we give grants to teachers who have creative, innovative ideas in what they want to do in their classrooms. And most of these ideas are hands-on. They're things that kids love. And it infuses the inspiration to learn in the child, but also in the teacher. And that's the beauty of the organization as a whole. So we have two speakers tonight. And I'm going to introduce our first speaker, her name is DJ Jensen. And instead of just giving you her bio, I asked her a couple of questions that I think will help you get to know her a little bit better. First question, do you prefer funny or serious greeting cards? Her answer was, if she's buying rather than making it, which is a clue into her personality, she's probably in a huge hurry, meaning the party is probably within 15 or 20 minutes from that moment. So because of that, she needs a card that does it all, and that would most likely be a funny card. Question 2, the character trait she most admires in her best friend. So her best friend's name is Melissa, and she most admires that Melissa can zone in on character traits immediately. So DJ trusts very easily, and her friend Melissa not so much. So Melissa can let her know when she's made an error, or more likely after the fact, when a friendship goes south, Melissa can tell her what she did wrong. Number 3, if she were to write a book and title it, what would it be about her own life? And her title would be It's All Good, and I loved her answer on this. So why would the title of a book about her life be It's All Good? She said when she gets knowledge or information, she decides whether to be empowered or victimized. And if it's not all good, she's just quite simply looking at it wrong. So how would she describe her career in one sentence? She is a change agent. She's looking to provide the best possible early childhood experience, and her motto, which she'll talk about a little bit, is get to yes faster. So DJ wrote a book that is for sale after the event called Monday Memo, and I would highly encourage you to take a look through it, maybe buy it. It's $20, correct? And she really is a change agent. Last question. Well, there's 2. What is the best bargain you've ever found? She found a spoon bracelet at a farmer's market. And since connection is so important to DJ, she told the vendor a story how this particular bracelet reminded her of her mother. And being so enamored with the story, of course, the vendor gave it to her for free. So that's her best bargain. And last question, we asked her of how did I word it? I think I said one of your greatest achievements. And she said that she was Dan's mom. And Dan's here with us today. So hi, Dan. So with that, I give you DJ Jensen.
I know, I'll probably hold it too.
Oh, you'll hold it too.
So,
okay.
which way?
Do you want me to untangle it?
Sure, thank you. So I have to say this in all fairness, because one day someone else is going to see this. I'm not just Dan's mom, I'm Nick's mom too. Love you, honey. Okay, so, when you come, somebody asks you to talk about play. It's funny, I'm talking to the choir, right? So I could sit here and tell you wonderful things about how important play is for young children, but I think that's the reason you're sitting in this room. So I think I'd rather talk to you about the future. Well, let's talk about you. Who are you? We have time. Who are you? And if you know who you are, how did you get there? And I think part of the answer, which you can't figure out tonight, but if you wake up at 3 in the morning, I'm at Dan's house, just give me a call. The answer comes from the things that you did in your formative years. It came from your play. It didn't come because the teacher said, hey, you, this is what you're going to do when you grow up. Well, maybe they did, but it still may have changed. Because as we begin to play, we begin to take on roles. And we play with that personality. I have a little boy, my Nicky I told you about, who, when he was 3 years old, he was a dog. Okay, so he would only eat anything that was in a bowl on the floor. So we did it with my husband looking on in a very strange way for about 2 days, and finally Nicky said he couldn't do that because it was hard to eat meat. So we ended off just mac and cheese for a couple of days, and then my dog became my son again. But this opportunity to try on a role is a way for children to figure out who they are and why they want to do and why they don't want to do what they do. So let's talk about where we're going to be in 20 years. Do you know that the majority of jobs that our children have today, I could. The majority of jobs that our children have today, they did not have 20 years ago. Maybe 25 years. How are you, Dan? 30 years ago. Think about this. 30 years ago, we were teaching children how to be doctors and lawyers and how to be electricians and how to build things specifically to a plan. That's what we taught them. This is what you're going to do so you can have this job when you grow up. So now here's my son who works in an industry that didn't really exist 30 years ago. He's at Starbucks. He is in a role that didn't exist 20 years ago or 30 years ago, which is social media, and working with people that 20 years ago didn't even know there was going to be a job that they had like this now. And if you think about that, how do you train somebody to do social media 25 years ago? How do you teach something that doesn't exist? How do you teach a child to do something in his life that's going to happen in 25 years when all we can envision is the Jetson cars rolling around? How can we do that? We do it with a couple of special ways. The first one is we teach them how to think. We don't teach them what to think, we teach them how to think. If we teach a child what to think, then when the answers come, they just repeat back to us. Therefore, nothing new is ever going to be created. But if we talk about how to think, we give a child the opportunity, and a student, therefore, kindergarten, first grade, at 20, 25, to tear apart something in order to solve the problem. I run a preschool in Washington, D.C., so I came from the other Washington. And I like this one better, I will tell you that. And in my preschool, we do observational drawings. So basically anything that's sitting in the table, probably not the water bottle, but let's just say this is a Mr. Potato Head, is sitting on the table, and the children are given a piece of paper and a clipboard and a felt tip marker. And they're asked to draw what they see. Parents say to me, why do we do that? Why do you spend time doing that? Well, in order to draw what you see, you have to look at it. And if you look at it, you see that there's not just a bottle, but there's a bottle with lines. And with that bottle of lines comes a label, and the label has colors. And you begin to dissect what you're seeing, right? And then you redesign it. What if we taught children how to think that way? So that when they're adults and they get faced with a problem, they go, how do I tear this apart so that I can redesign it? So the concept of play unfolds everything that we want our children to learn when they're little. We want them to learn how to be friends, how to negotiate, how to help each other, how to problem solve, how to come up with their own questions so that they can solve those questions, and how to do it with other people, how to do it on their own, and how to do it with confidence. So if we're going to do this, it's not going to happen with frontal teaching. We know that. We've seen it. The research has proven it. So why do we have such a problem? Why is it that this entire city, this room, all of the United States, people in Finland, if you read the research, all know what is best for children? We all do. We know that hands-on learning is what's best. We know that their brains engage faster. We know that the information is retained longer. We know this. It's science. This is not somebody's guess. So once we know this, how can we go back? How can you know something that's right for children and say, oh yeah, that's good. I'm going to go back to this. Where does that come from? In my years, this is my 30th year in the business, and one of the things I find when I go from city to city and I talk to teachers is that they agree with me. What they're scared of, any ideas? The parents. No offense if there's parents in the room. They scare us. They scare us because we think that they are going to leave us if we do what they think is, we do the opposite of what they're asking us? Well, guess what? If we know what's best for children, but they don't, wouldn't it make sense to bring them on our board? Yes, it would. But you know what? It's hard. Just as swimming upstream is hard. Working with people who don't believe yet is hard. But that wasn't why you got in this business. If we got in this business because it was easy, did we? It was for the money. No? We got in this business because we wanted what was best for children. So I want us just to go back and remember that the opportunities that you have that feel scary, that feel frustrating, are only there because you know what's right. Therefore, all you have to do is sit back and figure out what's another way to do this. So I'll give you a little quick, my history real quick. I am in my 30th year in this business, and I started off as a family daycare provider. You know how you have your little house and people come in? And then I had, as a kindergarten teacher, and I did the whole 9 yards. Ran a preschool, ran a chain of preschools, I did everything. And then I moved up and started working as a consultant around the country. And during that time, I started to find out what was wrong in this country. And one of the biggest things I found was fear. Fear. I'm scared to let children play because I'm scared they're going to get out of control. Okay. So if I control the kids, they're not going to hit each other. Okay. So when are the children going to learn to be friends? How's a child going to learn? Well, he's not doing it on my watch because I don't want anybody to get in trouble. I don't want anybody's mother to call me, and I don't want to have kids fighting in my classroom. So I'm going to do it. Another teacher will do it. I just can't do it, DJ. Okay. So then I go to other schools, and I talk to the directors, and I say, is this okay with you? And they go, no. So what do you want to do? Not much, because I'm a little scared. Okay, so how are we going to solve this? Well, it's just the way it's going to have to be, because this is all I know. And you know what? Everybody knows my school. When they go to the day school that's not around the corner, the teachers know who are my kids, because they know their alphabet, they know their numbers, they know their colors, they know everything. Okay, so I took the principal of the day school to lunch. No lie, did this in a city that I will not name, Summer South, and I said, tell me about the children that come into your school from that location. She goes, we know them. We can tell. They sit, they listen, they ask questions. Well, DJ, they really just break down around first, second grade. And I go, why? Because they have all this knowledge and no foundation. And this is the principal of the day school. So I asked the same question. What are you going to do about it? Expecting fully for her to say, I don't know, there's another day school that can do it. And she said to me, well, we hired you. And I was like, okay, now I can do something. I'm with people who want change. But anyway, so going back to where I am, I'm in D.C., live in Baltimore, work in D.C., if you've ever done that. Yeah, it's long, but it's the most incredible work because the school that I decided to work in is a school for whom my vision is going to be met. It's going to be where my vision is met. I want to create a child-led early childhood program that reaches every goal that the public schools and the private schools are looking for, and it's seamless. It's my goal. I can get there. Lofty's my word. So here's what we did. I walked into a school that was fully teacher-led. Lovely, wonderful people, teacher-led. Parents knew what they were buying. Because this school, they ready my kids for kindergarten. We know what that means, right? So we're going to ready these kids for kindergarten. They sit down, they do worksheets. They have, this is really what I saw, shelves of toys that said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I said, what is this? And she said, oh, that's how we rotate the toys. And I said, but what if somebody wants a Tuesday toy? As I walk over to open the Tuesday bucket, she goes, you can't do that. And I'm like, no, I can. I'm in charge. I can do this. I'm going to open the Tuesday bucket. And that, she didn't know the answer. She didn't know what to do with me. So as this started to go on, I started to meet these people. I realized they're scared. They're scared of control. They're scared of control issues. They're scared of parents. They're scared of everything. So what do? I said, okay, I want this job. I'm going to help the school figure out about play. So the first month, kids are playing in the kitchen, and they're making pancakes out of mix. That's really interesting. So I walked in, and I said to teachers, give me a minute, I want to help you. I didn't say I was polite, and so I moved everything around. I brought out the flour. I put the flour on the table, and I said, we can make pancakes out of this. And the kids said, how? I said, well, first you have to take it, touch it, and pat your face. So we took it, we touched it, we pat our faces to teachers going, At the end of that opportunity, the kids made the pancake batter. Everything was great. The teachers took the batter and they walked over to a plugged-in griddle where they began to put the pancake mix on the griddle. These children are 3, and I watched them go. Because why? They made the pancakes. They wanted to make the pancakes. I said, teachers, give me a chance. So we walked over to the stove, the gas stove, and the child, DJ said, we're going to make pancakes. You made pancakes, we're making pancakes. So he sat in front of the stove, and we got a step stool, and the child sat in front of me. And with this hand was his helper hand, which is what pushed his body back. This hand poured the batter, and then we watched it, and we flipped it, and the smile on these faces would have lit up this room. Little Paloma says to me, I'm going to help my dad make pancakes on Sunday. She says, because I know how to flip them. I said, you do. Then we got to the last little guy, little Milo, and I'm talking to the teachers who are almost crying. They're in the corner going, I have these children's health and safety in my, it's in my charge. They can't get hurt. I can't believe you're doing this. And I went, no, it's okay. Come here, Milo. Milo stands there, and his hand grazes the pan. Milo goes, ah! The teachers went, I told you. And I said, no, it's okay. Thinking to myself, how am I going to do this? How am I going to, come on, God, you put me here for a reason. How am I going to do this? I go, Milo, how you doing? He's like, I go, do you want to flip it? Yes, we flipped that pancake. I turn around, I go, does anybody else want to go? And they all went, no, we're good. So that was the end of that. So I called Milo's mom. Thank God she owned a yoga studio. And I told her this is what happened. And she's like, no, it's no big deal. So with that, the next week of the staff meeting, I gave the 2 teachers some spatulas, and I thanked them for allowing it. Now it's been a year and a half we've been together. They're fine. Now I have pictures of these kids making tacos, so I guess we're doing okay. But the way that we got there was teachers came to me and said, I just can't do it. I can't do it. I'm scared of the parents. I'm scared of this or whatever. And I know what you're saying, and I know that's right, but I just can't do it. So my answer was, get to yes faster. Doesn't matter what it is, I'll back you. Doesn't matter. So your kids are in your classroom, and one of the children has to go get some twigs out on the playground because he's got an idea for a nest, and he's just not working with the popsicle sticks because that's not going to make the nest because birds don't get popsicle sticks to make their nests. But you are inside, and you've got cramps, and you don't want to go outside, so how are you going to help this child go and get these sticks? I said, your answer is to say, okay, how are you going to do it? I can't go. Not, I can't go with cramps, leave me alone, but I can't go. So how are you going to go? And then the teachers and the children start to figure out the plan. You want to do something? That's fine. Figure it out. We don't have to do it for you. We won't do it for you. So here are my children, 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, going through this process. And they're feeling pretty good about themselves. And my teachers are starting to get comfortable. And about 3 months ago, one of my threes teachers, who very quiet, she's a good threes teacher. She's very quiet, very calm. She comes running into my office. 90 minutes, and it's done. And I go, oh, okay. So we go into her room, and the kids had taken apart a keyboard. And she said, all I did was give them the keyboard and screwdrivers. I said, did you show them how to use the screwdrivers? No, we just sat back and took pictures. And I'm thinking, oh, God, okay, I do have to teach them protocol, but that's okay. So they sat there, and for an hour and a half, these children taught themselves how to take up this keyboard. And she said, I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe you. I didn't believe it. And now I see what's going on. Now I see it. If you walk down my school now, you walk down the hall by the 2-3s room, there's this huge box where parents have brought off printers and other kinds of equipment for them to tear apart and use and do something else with. Meanwhile, I've got 3-year-olds walking down the hall going, we just used a screwdriver to tear apart a keyboard. And my 4s are going, well, we know what 12 is. And so those teachers now want to learn how to do this. So part of this process to get to yes faster is why I said yes when then they asked me to come out and speak, because I think that the message isn't about let's just do it. It's about let's do it with intention. Let's do it with the research behind us. Let's do this purposefully. Let's not be scared. We understand what play does. And in case you didn't want to Google it, I'll give you a couple details. Play teaches self-esteem. It teaches who I am. It teaches me how to negotiate, how to problem solve, how to think. It teaches me how to articulate. It teaches me how to help my friend. The best peer scaffolding comes on the playground. I don't want to go down the slide. Here, watch me. I'll do it, you do it, and I'll do it. Teachers can't get a child to go down the slide. 3-year-old Mikey can get you down the slide. That's what play does. Play gives us the courage to try something new. And if we don't do it, we may just end up with the kind of world that only knows how to be people who think the way their grown-ups taught them. And I want a world where children think the way they want to think and how they want to help this world. Now, I'm going to go back to one more question, then I'll be done. How big is a 64-foot dinosaur? Anybody? You would think. You would think. So teacher reads the story to the children and says, how big is a 65-foot dinosaur? Dinosaur, 65 feet. We get a piece of tape. We make it 65 feet. 65 feet, so that you know, is very long. So we do 65 feet. The children are like, oh my gosh, this is so huge. And then somebody starts to figure out what 65 feet looks like. Is it really from neck to tail? Or is it from shoulders to legs? So now we have to refigure out what it might be. And then we want to see how to wrap around the tail. If the tail's wrapping around, is it still 65 feet? This is what happened in the FORCE program. Then they were so excited building things and designing things and wanted to find out how tall things were. They came into my office to see how big around Miss DJ was. We chose not to do that one. Then they wanted to do something tall. And then they wanted to do something short. And then they did the teacher's SUV, which was not 65 feet. But they went outside and started measuring everything. These kids are now probably second grade now, I guess in second grade now. They know how to solve those problems. They know how to ask questions. They know how to get their peers. I am just so happy to have the opportunity to speak here and happy to be able to support what you're doing. It is very difficult to live in a community where we have to beg people to think about what's right. But for you, you're doing it. I say to you, keep on going. Congratulations to all of the teachers. I can't wait to see what your projects are going to look like, not just this year, next year. And I'd love to see where your children are a year after that. If there's anything else I can do for you, my email is very easy to remember. It's playforaliving@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Oh, I forgot I had to hold this. Okay, everybody got a popper? Okay. Now, my 4-year-old granddaughter taught me how to use these. And so, do all of you know what to do? Turn it upside down, pinch it, and let it pop. Some fall, some fly. Everybody try it. Oh, she's got it on her head. I did that the other day, too. I heard some people were popping them while DJ was talking. Okay, so I was playing with these. I keep a lot of preschool toys in my school and my house, which happen to be a little connected. And so I play a lot. Having one popper, you've got to have a lot. So I had translucent ones actually on my light table. And when they would pop, I could hear the kids giggling, and then they are the one who taught me to put it on their forehead. And then on their hands and their cheeks, like this, and all over their bodies. So anyway, I started thinking about having them upstairs for my grandchildren to have. So I had a big bag full. We were playing. And who really, really got into these was a high school friend of ours. He is now graduating tonight from Newport High School. And we were all playing with these and making them pop. And I said, what do you think about these if these were children? What do you think? What comes to your mind? And he said that every single one of us is popping them. And every single one is different. Some are going that way, some are going that way, some are barely popping, and some are flying. And he said, and this is a very bright boy, and he's let me know quite a few times that he isn't thrilled with high school. And I said, well, what does this make you think of children? And he said that every single one of us is different. We all need something different, but we're all trying to learn the same way. And I was kind of taken back by his comment. And so then we started to think together again how developmentally different we all are. And I asked him what would help, and he said, if every one of these poppers could kind of address their own learning the way they wanted to. So I thought I would just introduce you to poppers. They're really cheap. You should buy some. I heard some of you fidgeting. They're also really great little, some of us shake our leg and some of us do have their self-regulating. But anyway, enjoy your poppers.
Okay, so now we have a real treat, a dear friend of mine, Kevin Chavous. Want to come up? I'm so excited to have him here. We're really, really lucky to have him. So a couple things about Kevin. Same scenario. We try to be a little creative in our introduction. So we started with Kevin on his most expensive mistake. So apparently, in the past, Kevin purchased a giant Range Rover, and his gut told him that it needed a little work. But he went ahead and purchased that Range Rover, and it did. The transmission broke, all sorts of other things went wrong, and he just had to grin and bear it. But he grins because guess which he buys for people, funny or serious cards? Funny. Because as you'll see, he loves to make people laugh. So that's a great quality about Kevin. A couple more serious things. I asked Kevin what is the pivotal moment that shifted his focus. So Kevin was a DC council member for 12 years. He's written 3 books. The most recent is available in September, and it's called Changing the Culture of Learning in America. Deanne's introduction actually was great because he focuses not exclusively on high school, but older children than what you heard DJ talking about. So it's a great compliment. So I asked him his pivotal moment, and he said when he first got elected council member in DC, he was visiting schools, and you could just tell that something was not working. So he went and found out who the best teacher in those schools were, in this particular school. And he went and talked to the teacher, and he said, what's going on here? And a pivotal moment that shifted the course of his career was the teacher said, you know what, this is kind of a ghetto school, and these kids aren't going to learn anyway. And this was the best teacher. So that was number 1. Number 2, he was visiting prison systems and asking about the inmates, just asking different questions. Where'd they go to school? 90 to 95% of them were high school dropouts. And the statistic for our country today is 82% of our inmates are high school dropouts. Okay, so book title. If he were to write a book about himself to date, because he's going to do a lot more, the title would be The Guy Who Just Can't, but Must Do. The Guy Who Just Can't Be, Must Do, because he can't sit still, and thank goodness for that. So I'd like to introduce Kevin Chavous.
Thanks, Maria. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I am in Seattle. This is a friendly place, right? So, as you heard, I did come from the political world, and a good political friend of mine told me, Kevin, you know how to put words together, but you need to appreciate the 3 B's. Be brief, be brilliant, then be gone. So I'm going to work on 2 out of 3. The first thing I want to say is give DJ a hand. Everything she said, assume I said it. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your passion and your heart for children. I think that's what makes America great. I'm going to do 2 or 3 things real quick, and again, I'll try to be brief. I want to really address this question that DJ posed about why we can't change, and I'm going to move up about 30,000 feet before I come back down to earth. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk about where we have been, where we are, and where we need to be in terms of education in America. So the first part really is a history lesson. I want you to step back in time with me. 100 years ago this morning, the vast majority of American school-aged children walked to their neighborhood school, and they entered a schoolhouse that was run by the government. And in that schoolhouse that was open at 9 o'clock and closed at 3 p.m. with the summers off, so that the kids could work in the field during this industrial revolutionary time, work in the field before school and harvest in the summer. That's why they had the schedule they did. And when they walked into this schoolhouse, these children were divided according to age and segregated by subject matter. So they taught history in certain chunks at a certain period of time. They taught English, they taught algebra, all segregated. The subject matters were all segregated and separated. And they were divided by age, so the 10-year-olds were all together, the 7-year-olds were all together, and so on and so forth. And then they were taught by teachers who at the time went to the normal schools. They had education. It was a predecessor to the education schools that most universities have. So they all came through that same rote system. This was the warehousing of education that began at a time when warehousing was indeed at its peak during the Industrial Revolution in the late 1800s. Now, that was 100 years ago this morning. 100 years ago later, the vast majority of American school-age children walk into the same type of educational environment. Virtually nothing has changed over the last 100 years for the vast majority of American school-age children. Now think about what has happened over the last 100 years. Well, we've been through 2 world wars. We've had the Korean conflict. We've had Vietnam. We've had various skirmishes in the Middle East in places like Nicaragua. We've had the high-flying 50s where there was prosperity, followed by the turbulent and countercultural days of the 60s. We've had a Great Depression. We've had recessions. Black folks and women were allowed to vote during that time. During all of this, most importantly, we went from that industrial revolutionary time to the information age. That industrial revolution time where we were trained toward warehousing and building to scale in a warehousing manner, to this information age, which is driven by the individual and making sure that we focus on individual needs in an individualistic way. All of our marketing, all of our business. In fact, I guess that's how Seattle is doing these days with Microsoft and some of the other companies here. Everyone has their own individual PDA. That's where we have been. And now where we are 100 years later is that each and every day, 6,000 to 7,000 children drop out of school, 1 million kids a year. 48% of Americans, according to the Department of Education, 48%, did he say yes? 48%, that's half of America's public schools are deemed to be underperforming or failing. Half the kids of color drop out of school. And as people talk about things like Common Core and graduation rates and standards, keep in mind that 2/3 of American high school graduates are either unready or unfit for college or a career. 2/3. So to me, it doesn't matter if we talk about standards or not, because why talk about standards if we aren't even measuring up based on the standards we already have? That's, to me, a senseless fight. So that's where we are. I learned this, as Maria indicated, when I was on the DC Council, and I just couldn't understand why we were so used to and why we were so committed to doing things the same way, in the same manner, the same approach. And anything that you suggest is different, you get met with open hostility. As DJ said, an example similar to what she was talking about in terms of picking in that Tuesday box. What if each one of you probably took algebra in the 9th grade? So it's your mama and your grandmama. And what if a kid's ready for it in the 7th grade? Oh, no, you can't do that. I mean, the schedule, or what about maybe the 11th grade? No, we are so used to this one-size-fits-all, it has been an anathema to the individual needs of children, and it has created a major problem in terms of the outputs for kids. So that's where we've been and where we are. Now, let me talk about where we need to be. While I was in office, I helped drive our charter school movement and our choice movement, because largely because I felt we needed to at least try something different. Some of those folks that came to me with these great ideas for charter schools, I said, hey, you know, a 24-hour residential facility for kids, let's do it. Right now we've got the only one in the country. Now they have other places. They've branched out in Baltimore and other places, and 90% graduation rate, 90% college going rate. Sounded good to me. Kids who are in homes they shouldn't be in, and they're in a residential public charter school in D.C. that works. Math and science, school for the arts, adult immersion, Spanish, English. We've got a host of these innovative schools that are working for children. But then if you read, and I know here you've read all about the charter school movement and why it shouldn't, it's bad, and you know you don't support public schools. But think about it, with all the rancor that has been written and spoken about with respect to the idea of charter schools and choice, the vast majority of kids still go to the traditional public schools that aren't serving half of the kids' needs. I mean, charter schools are only 2-3 million kids. Publicly funded scholarships, 400,000. So of the 58 million school children in America, 55 million are still going to the traditional schools. And it struck me that when you unpack why it's so hard to resist and why there's such intense resistance to change, I think it comes down to our culture. See, in those old days, it used to be during that traditional time period that I talked about 100 years ago, 50 years ago, that great American ethos. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you work hard, you get an education. There was a value in it. It was part of our culture. It's part of who we are. It's how we identified as a society when compared to other nations around the world. There was something prideful in working hard to achieve a goal. But we sort of lost that over the years with the increasing number of kids in poverty, with babies making babies, with generations upon generations of American families not getting that hard work ethic and that spirit. So much so that we now have so many young people who don't even see the value of an education or working hard. In fact, the culture that we have today in society suggests, you know, I want to be a rapper, I want to be an athlete, I want that money quick, I want all the beautiful things. I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, like the Kardashians have. I'm sorry. That's what people watch. Millions of people each and every day watch that stuff. So there's no wonder why it's hard for us to go to some of these people with the images that they face every day and say, you need to work hard and get your education and make something of yourself. And you need to do it in the same setting and structure that we had in place 100, 150 years ago. Hello, that just ain't going to work. So we need to change our culture, which is what my new book is about. And how do we do that? Well, there are a couple ways. First of all, I think, and this goes back again to what DJ alluded to in terms of this fear-based thinking. Fear-based thinking has become endemic to American life. We need a new form of patriotism, a new form of nationalism that's not fear-based. One where we say we're going to build a culture of learning, and we're going to wrap our arms around this culture of learning so that it's positively infectious, and that we take personal and national pride in learning. The only form of patriotism we have now is totally fear-based. We don't want them folks to come over here and hurt us. Everything is based on, people raise the American flag when we're under attack or the threat of being under attack. What if we flip that? What if we do a pivot and we lift the American flag in terms of something that is aspirational and inspirational and wholly American in content and scope? When I visit schools in Belgium, I got a whiff of that when these kids in Belgium had some amazing test results as well. And these 14, 15-year-old boys, they knew I was from the States and I was from education. We're smarter than your 14 and 15-year-olds. And I got mad. I got defensive. I said, well, let's go play some basketball or something then. You know, I can beat you in something. But there was this form of civic and personal pride associated with their standing in school. Something, wouldn't it be amazing if we had that here, this new form of patriotism, new form of nationalism? And what if, not only that, we decided as a second approach to how we change this culture, that we lift up the models that work. Most people don't know what they don't know. They don't know what DJ's doing. They don't know what these teachers who are getting these grants tonight, what they're doing. In fact, in the den of noise around education, it's what we're not doing that gets more attention than the good things we are doing. And we should take and have a concentrated effort along the lines of lifting up models of work. One thing I've done is I've taken legislators from states as we consider, you know, ed reform bills in different states. I take groups of legislators to visit schools and state unique schools, you know, traditional public, private, charter, whatever, and to show what they do. And I'm amazed when these legislators who are voting on things say, wow, we didn't know education could be like that. Again, because people don't know what they don't know. We need to lift up those models. They need to get more attention. The teachers who are doing innovative things, they shouldn't be suffering in darkness, worried if their principal is going to tell them you can't do this and figure out a way to work around it. We need to lift that up so if we shine a spotlight on it and people like it, then they say, you're not going to mess with that teacher because we like what he is doing. The next thing we need to do, and I learned this in working with a lot of celebrities who want to start charter schools or choice schools or get involved in education, we got to make education cool again. Yeah, you know, I'll go back to the Kardashians. I like picking on them, but I keep talking about them because people pay attention to them. If Kim said, I'm going back to get my GED, how many people do you think would go back and get their GED? It's sad. I know it's sad, but it's true. We've got to make education cool again. We've got to do things. I worked with Pitbull when he wanted to start his charter school, and Jalen Rose when he wanted to do his, and people like Janet Evans and Kathy Lee Gifford came to me about education stuff. I mean, just a whole range of people. And when I learned hanging out with them, when I start talking about what we need to do to change, and people look at me with their arms folded, when one of them gets up and says, oh yeah, can I get your autograph? We need to do that. There's something around this whole idea of engaging those people who are trusted voices in the cause for building America's learning culture in the way it needs to be built. We need to bring them in as ambassadors for learning and then deploy them in places like Seattle so that people understand that, you know what, it ain't about whether or not it's a charter or choice school. It's about whether or not it is a school or a learning environment that works for children. And I tell you what, if my good friend Shaquille O'Neal says that, there'll be people out there who will listen to him more than they'll listen to me or, you know, some of the other so-called learned experts. So make education cool again. The other thing we need to do is we need to create a voice for change among real change agents. That's similar to lifting up the models that work. Because, you know, when I hear DJ and I've heard people like her, I always want to, like, you know, get on a loudspeaker and amplify those voices. They're often more muted than what they should be. And let me tell you, when people hear those voices, they respect and understand those voices. Because what they're saying, what these teachers who are getting these grants tonight understand is that we have moved from that warehousing culture of old that worked during that time to this whole personalized lifestyle that exists now in our country. And in keeping with this drive toward customized living, we need to have personalized learning. So as opposed to forcing a circle in a square or forcing a kid to fit in a one-size-fits-all environment, whatever learning environment that child is in is malleable enough to meet those kids where they are and then excite the possibilities of learning, make it fun so that they can get what they deserve out of education. That's where we need to be. And then I'm going to end with this. I want to share with you an example of a school district that has done it. You know, as I was working on the book, I went to several schools, hundreds of schools around the country. And I picked several that I really liked, but I narrowed down 3 or 4 schools. A traditional public school in Boston, where they're in the system. The principal fights every day. She's built a learning culture, so much of a learning culture that janitors and sanitation workers near the school and the community come to me and say, because of what Miss Keenan's doing at Salem Wood, I went back to school. You know, the whole culture believed in the power of learning. It was a powerful thing. Or Houston Heights Elementary, where Yvette East, it was a charter school where Yvette East had several low-income Latino parents as primary parent base in her school. And she got them so excited that she had hundreds of these parents volunteering and coming on the school every day, and it built this whole culture of learning where everyone was totally focused on the individual needs of each of the children. Or Nikisha Hobbs, an African-American woman, a young educator who started her own private school on the south side of Chicago that focused on civic responsibility. And she had, you know, 3rd and 4th graders drilling their legislator about certain pieces of law that had them go back and say, let me check with my staff, I'll get right back with you. But then I ran into the folks at the Lindsay School District. Now, let me paint the picture of Lindsay School District. It's located in a migrant farm worker rich area of California between Fresno and Bakersfield. It's a community where there's about 15,000 people. And in Lindsay, of those 5,000 students in the Lindsay Unified School District, the average educational attainment of their parents, many of whom are undocumented, is 5th grade. Many can't speak English. And the Lindsay story is one that demonstrates how you can go from the worst performing school district in the state of California to one of the higher performing ones over a period of 7 years by shifting to a totally personalized learning environment. And the incentive to do so came when the superintendent, Tom Rooney, he was assistant superintendent at the time 7 or 8 years ago when they started this, looked up and realized that they had 9 straight valedictorians graduate from Lindsay High School who had to take remedial classes in college. 9 years in a row. And it struck him and his team, if this is what our best looks like, then what the heck do the rest look like? And he said, we have got to start from scratch. So he called in his staff, and he said, I don't care what the union says, I don't care what the school board says, we're going to rebuild the Lindsay School District because we're doing a disservice to these children. So they called a community meeting. They went flyers all over Lindsay. That first community meeting on a Saturday, they had 2,000 people in a community of 15,000. Think about it. Y'all who know the math, y'all can figure out the percentages. But if you got that percentage at a school board meeting or community meeting here, you would have thousands and thousands of people. 2,000 people showed up on that first Saturday. And they said we have had 9 straight valedictorians who were ill-prepared for college. They made all A's, they graduated, but they weren't ready. So we are going to change things here, and we need you to do it. Because they didn't want to put in place what I know they've done it here. They've done it everywhere. A blue ribbon panel of the muckety-muck saying, you know, I've got so-and-so degree, and I'm on the panel, and the former governor is the chairman of the commission. We're going to unpack what we need to do in education and have this panel report back to us in 6 months. And during that 6 months, they study data and research. They don't talk to one kid in one school, but they come up with a blue ribbon commission report that's stellar and marketable, that's 200 pages that no one reads. Now, I'm sorry if you've served on those panels. I don't mean to insult anyone, but I've been there and I've done that. So they said, we don't want a blue ribbon commissioner. We've told the school board is here, but we don't want them involved because we want you to tell them how they should run the school district. So they asked 4 or 5 basic questions. It's in my book. What should the profile be of a Lindsay High School graduate? What should education and learning look like for the average Lindsay student? 4 or 5 questions. And then they broke up in those 2,000 people in little groups, and they said, you give us the answers. Over a 9-month period, every Saturday morning, they met. And they came back with the Lindsay Unified School District plan. Quite simple. And in that plan, they laid out what it should be. And what they did, frankly, was astounding. The first thing they did, which they've adopted 7 years ago, they said, we don't think that the current approach of learning works for these kids. Some don't know English. Some may be behind because they've come up in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and they come from Mexico, what have you. So we're going to adopt a totally personalized learning system, which they do. I spend time in the classroom, and they sit there, and they have these kids. Some work individual, most of them are in groups. You know, the teacher sort of walks around like a coach, and these kids have a sheet they work with. And each kid has their sheet, and let's say it's a history class. And during history for the semester, you have to know 30 different things. And then they check when you learn, 1 through 30. And you go at your own pace. And when these kids, the kids show me a sheet, this is my history. I'm supposed to know 30 things. We're over halfway. I only have 13. But in my math class, where I have 30 things, I'm up to 21. So I can make up for it, and I've got people work for me, and then so-and-so, he's better in history than me, so he's helping me. And these kids live by their individual sheets, and the teacher monitors them. So they went to this personalized learning. Each child has a computer. They have computers in the individual homes. Because it's a rural district, and they had a hard time wiring the homes, because they had reached out to the community, and it was from the bottom up and organically driven, they were able to knock on neighbors' doors who didn't have kids in the school district and say, hey, we need to wire your home to get to these people. Oh, yeah, I know what you're doing. Go ahead, come on in and wire it. So every home was wired in that entire rural community, even though they were several miles away from each other, because they went to neighbors who didn't even have kids in the school district who may have attended the community meeting in the beginning. Then they did something completely radical. And this is blasphemy. I know teachers love this. Some teachers would love this, but the district would, most school districts, they said, we're not going to have any grades. No grades. We're getting rid of grading. Because if the kids are working their individual plan and they're progressing, guess what? They're going to be okay. And now, this is the punchline. They've quadrupled college admissions. Not having grades hadn't affected them at all. The colleges love the students because they, guess what, test much better because they know the stuff. They have fun, and they're not stigmatized by he's got an A, he's got a B. And it's this total personalized learning environment is working well for the kids. I was with kids who started this in the 3rd or 4th grade who are getting ready to get out of high school. This is all they know, and they love it. You see, in conclusion, that culture that I've seen at some of these schools and that culture in that entire school district shows what is possible when we trust teachers to empower children to learn at the level that works best for them. And on this brave new world toward how we build a better future and brighter future for tomorrow for our kids, I think that the heart and soul comes down to winning hearts and minds and getting people to believe in the power of education by meeting them where they are. Thank you very much.
Okay. Everybody has a bag, a blue bag. You can't trade them in for new color. I heard that. So get out your bag, and if you have bubbles in your bag, will you come up on the stage? Open your bubbles. Come on up. I know it is. They're childproof so kids don't die and choke. Yeah. Something sharp. A key. Oh my gosh. It's a teacher innovative. She opens it with her ring. Okay, play with your bubbles. Okay. Go ahead, have fun. Yeah, have fun.
Mine doesn't have the thing. Got it. I feel like you won. Yes, please.
It's painful.
I guess we could make all kinds of cakes now.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Yes. Your cake's all.
I liked letting him struggle. Yeah. Try to catch some.
That's a good one. Who can make the biggest bubble? I win. No. Sorry, Heather. I'm setting this up. I got you. She's so talented at this. That one's perfect. You killed it. I caught your bubble. Are we supposed to be learning something? I got to eat some.
Thanks. That's all I had to do.
Is that? Okay.
How many of you wish you could have come up here and played with bubbles? How many of you wanted to do something for them or with their bubbles? Yes.
I had to just whisper this to Maria because what we just saw, I know you saw this, but they created a game immediately. Once they figured out what they were doing, they created a game. Nobody gave them a plan. They created the game. There were rules. There was consequences. There was a challenge. And they supported each other. And it was just incredible. I don't know what the purpose of this was, but I love that. Okay. Thank you.
But it was also to show you the longer I gave them, they're adults, so they were a little nervous, but kids need time, and they need time to stay engaged until they're done. And the more they experimented with those materials, the more, like DJ said, the more thought and wonder happened. How many of you sitting out there knew how hard you had to blow to get a big one? How many of you knew? From experience? Mm-hmm. But for young children? Mm-mm. And I remember thinking my favorite class in high school was science. Science. It's because it was hands-on and I got to kill a lot of fruit flies. Not on purpose. I was experimenting, but it was the hands-on and I got to stay with it a whole hour. So the purpose of the bubbles is to encourage that thought about give children time and be sure that you have enough bubbles for everybody. So lots of loose parts and lots of time for them to have a sense and to create a sense of wonder and to be inspired to interact and inspired to maybe stay off by themselves and to learn at whatever level they needed to take the bubbles to.
Okay, our last thing tonight is our grant recipients, and a few other teachers are going to come up and do a quick little panel. So if you're one of those people. And then I think if you guys can just move up to the front, since we're a small group, let's be a happy little intimate group. So just take a seat if you're one of our teachers. You can hop up or whatever you want. So to start, I would love for each of you to just quickly, you can just pass the mic, tell us who you are and what school you're at.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I was watching people move and was worried about their safety, and so I just want to tell who I am and...
Who you are and your school.
Okay.
Just a quick introduction to start.
Okay. My name is Laura McGinnis, and I teach all-day kindergarten at Carnation Elementary in the Riverview School District.
I don't know. I'm Erica Navarro-Dix. I teach first grade at Carnation Elementary in the Riverview School District.
I am Jennifer Hampshire, and next year I will be third grade at Glacier Park Elementary in Tahoma.
I'm Colleen Rose, and I teach first grade at Cougar Ridge Elementary in the Issaquah School District.
I'm January Colacurcio. I teach for an online high school called Washington Virtual Academy.
And I'm Erin Perea, and I currently teach at a private kindergarten of my own.
Thanks. So we're going to start with Erin. Erin's also on our board, so she's very familiar with everything that we do, and was one of the really spearheaded a lot of the thinking that went into Ideas Ignited. So she's going to tell us a little bit about her school and what she's doing.
Yeah, sure. How does it work? Click. Okay. So I'll make this short and quick, but that's hard as a teacher, so we like to talk. But I usually like to talk to little people. You guys are a little big. So anyways, I taught for 9 years in the public school system, and I really longed for a classroom that was open to fostering the children's spirits, that allowed us to play and build and do all kinds of things, and I realized that wasn't going to happen in my current situation. So I quit, and I opened my own school with the help of an Ideas Ignited grant. So at our school, it's kind of hard to see with those lights on. I don't know if we can dim them a little bit. Thank you. So at my school, it's kindergarten, first grade, and we have a couple third graders, and we don't have grades. We don't have formal assessments. We play, and we use our imagination a lot, and we build a lot. So one of the things that my kids have learned this year is that they are powerful, and they are capable. In this particular series of pictures, we had gone for a walk through our neighborhood, And we came across this wood pile in front of a construction site. And without hesitation, the kids said, "We need that wood." And they didn't even question whether they were going to get that wood. They knew they would. They just had to figure out how. So we went back to school, and I said, "What are you going to do to get the wood?" And they said, "We're going to write a letter. It's going to be a persuasive letter, and we're going to write all the reasons we need that wood." And so we did, and we walked back, and they hand-delivered it to the foreman, who came out all sweaty and dirty, and he read the letter, and he said, "Well, sure, take it. We're going to throw it away anyways." So Teacher Tom pulled up with his truck, and we loaded it into the back of his truck. We went back, and they built a dollhouse with a garage and also a doghouse that you can see. They didn't hesitate. They knew they would get that. They knew they were capable. They knew their voice mattered, and it's because all year I've fostered that within them. They are capable. You can solve this problem. Your voice matters. We also get really loud in my classroom, and we get really messy, and we do things that maybe you wouldn't do in a regular classroom. So we were working on balance, and we stacked cups. We stacked blocks and popsicle sticks, and then it wasn't long before they said, "Hey, can we stack us?" And I said, "I don't know. Give it a try." And we got loud. They stacked themselves in a pyramid. We crashed. We laughed, because learning is fun, learning is funny, and learning is loud. In a traditional classroom, you usually walk in, it's pretty quiet. Kids sitting at their desk. You walk into my classroom, it's very rarely quiet, because learning is loud. We also do a lot of problem solving in engineering. I give them challenges. And what they learn through that is not just the process of engineering and the problem solving that comes in, it's perseverance. So, for example, in the middle two pictures, you can see Sophia and Kenneth and Bryn. Their challenge was to build a rescue device that included a crank to rescue Fred, who had fallen to the bottom of a ravine. That's all I told them. Has to include a crank. We'd done our learning about cranks and simple machines and all of that. I gave them the list of materials. It was pretty much anything in our junkyard that they call junkyard. And I let them go. I let them have at it. What they learned from that is that it's really hard. It's really difficult to lift Fred. They failed. They redesigned. They tried again. They failed. And every once in a while, they would look at me and say, "What should we do?" And I said, "I don't know. What do we know about cranks? What do we know about how heavy he is?" And they eventually got it. Or the time that they tried 5 times to get their boat not to sink or to move in the wind, they persevered. They didn't give up. And I didn't give them the answer either. But I was there to support them, and even though it was pouring down rain and probably about 55 degrees in that picture, they had to get in the water. So why not? Take your shoes off, get in. The last one over there is building an obstacle course for one of our new robots that we have, little Sphero that rolls around. We persevere, and we celebrate a lot at our school. We clap and we laugh for each other. We also dig for worms and make a little habitat for them. We get wet. We pump water, and then we transport water because kids have to transport things all the time. You can't just pump water. You have to move it. You have to dump it. You have to get wet. And it took Miles and Tucker quite a while to figure out how to carry that heavy bucket. Teamwork. We learned how to play chess. We just had fun. But so much learning happening in that. Here, Sammy and Tessa and Kepri, they are using their musical skills to program our little robot, Dash, how to play a song. Working together. We use puzzles to tease our minds and to wonder. And then we slow down, and we look through microscopes, and we look at the world in a totally different way. And I just let them use it. I didn't tell them how. And eventually we had sugar under there, we had salt under there, we were looking at the crystals, we were looking at everything. But we slow down. In my classroom, we slow down. We give them time. And here, actually, was just today, in school this morning. Tucker and Beckett spent a really long time learning this code and how to get their robots to move and do a little dance and spin around, and they worked together and they questioned. And Sophia has her Ozobot, they're called, on an iPad, and she's figuring out how to fix a challenge, a problem within this course. We slow down and we just play. And if they want to sit on the table, they get to sit on the table at my school. They're 5. And most importantly, we spend every day playing. We played outside. We played inside. We played with our bare feet. We played in the snow. Didn't matter, but we play every single day. So with that, I will hand it back over to Maria.
So one thing we hear all the time at Ideas Ignited is that's really great for you. You have a tiny, small private school, but what about public school? And that is the problem that we are trying to solve. So we support any school, any teacher that has innovative and creative thinking. I don't care if it's private, charter, public, but when we hear that criticism that we need to get that into our public schools because, as Kevin said, every kid does have the possibility and creativity is not a privilege that we should only be giving to those schools. That's what we're trying to solve. So the rest of our teachers on this panel are all public school teachers, and we've got the online component, which is not a grant recipient, not because she's my sister, but just because we haven't quite figured out the online component. But she's going to talk a little bit about that in the Q&A. But first, I would love if our grant recipients could just give us a quick synopsis of what you're planning to do with the grant you received.
So I'm so jealous of Erin's school. They get to sit on the desk. They have all types of desks. There are short desks, tall desks. They can sit where they want to do what you want. If you go into a traditional classroom, you'll see desks aren't in rows as much anymore. They're together in clumps, usually of cooperative groups. But they're all the same. They're the same chairs, the same type of desk, same height, same everything. Children aren't the same. So for me, for my grant, I would like chairs, the ball chairs, chairs with backs, desks that are tall. I want different levels of seating so that kids can stand up, that they move around. They don't need to sit in those chairs that we have. I would also am planning on a child center classroom where there's different centers around the room of various types of tables, types of chairs, where they're more small group, where there's only a spot for one person, because I have kids that want headphones on because they don't want to be around other kids. They need that little independent spot. There's some that like to be in a group that are standing up. So what I've done in my research phase for this grant is I have already rearranged my room to kind of see what could happen the past 4 weeks of school, and they love it. It's been so much more interaction and they're more engaged. And I just had a writer's celebration last week when the parents came in. It's the first time the parents saw the room, and they're like, I love this. I love this change. I love what you're doing here. And I said, and guess what? It's going to be even better next year because I'm going to have different chairs and I'm going to have different seats. And so I think I can get the parent community on board because that is the fear. That's the fear of the change, of what are the parents going to be feeling. So that's what I'm excited about. And Erin has really inspired me to go that direction. So thank you.
I also am inspired by Erin and the idea of bringing in more play into our classroom. And I get concerned about a one-size-fits-all curriculum. My original days of teaching, it was very much a scripted curriculum, and I would close the door, put down the blinds, and do my own thing. And when I would do that, the kids were so inspired. And so bringing that idea into my own classroom, I'm going to have a creation station area full of tons of different STEM materials, giving students challenges, many of which you can probably see through Erin's pictures. I want to foster the idea that failure is part of the process in learning, and students need to embrace that failure in order to succeed and also have grit. A lot of my students right now are so scared of failing that they're not even willing to give it a try. And when things get just a little tough, they give up. And that's not what I want for my son, and that's not what I want for anybody else's kids. And so I'm going to start with the Creation Station, where we learn through play how to fail, and then bring in our curriculum into the Creation Station. So when we're learning fractions, I'm going to start a wood shop and get our community members in. In the Tahoma School District, Maple Valley, I've got a lot of support through my parent community, and bringing in parents to talk about and have that creation or the collaboration in our classrooms and show that homeschool connection. And then I also want to have some sort of a cooking environment. A little bit worried about the oven situation, but I like the safe hands. I might be calling you about that. Because I think that using whatever we're learning in class and bringing that into a real-world environment, so it's not just a worksheet and regurgitate the information, but seeing real-world applications, I just think that that's the way that we're going to get our students to a different level.
So I'm fortunate in my district that next year we're getting iPads to share at a grade level. So I'll have about 10 in my classroom at a time unless my teammate gives me her 10. Well, that got me thinking when Erin presented me with this grant to apply for, well, how can I enhance the iPads? Because it's taken us a long time in our district to get these iPads. We're a small district, we don't have a lot of money. And so I started thinking, what could I do? Well, I had seen Erin post videos of her Dash and Dots and their little robots. It was the picture with the xylophone. And I started thinking, well, we've talked about coding. We spend a week in December having the kids code in the computer lab one time for about an hour, and that's it. Coding's a big deal nowadays. Well, the robots can help the kids learn to code. But not only that, they can have the kids be creative, problem solving. We notice our kids have social skill problems. This is a way. Put them in a group. Give them a challenge. They're going to have to solve it with the Dash and Dots. So I'm really excited to get them in my classroom.
So I've been around for quite a while. I can embarrass you, Erin, but I won't.
You can. It's okay.
Erin was my student. I was much younger then. I was pregnant with my son, who's now 24. So that's all I'll say. Almost 24. So, sorry. So it's kind of cool to see things come back around, and I'm really proud of you. You've done a really nice job. So anyway, but I've been around long enough to see the pendulum swing back and forth and back and forth, and currently teaching kindergarten and having the state is going to everybody teaching all day. Everybody will have all day kindergarten in their school districts, and it's all day K for all, and it's tuition free. So with that change comes some change in the standards and things, which is very exciting. And with that change comes, and it depends on how you read the standards, mandatory play. And so I finally feel like this is my first year back in kindergarten. Before I was first grade, and before that it was kindergarten, and before that was fourth grade. So it's been a little bit of a change. But I always felt like when we were playing, I had to hide. That it wasn't okay to just let the kids play, even though that's what they needed and that's how they learn. How do you teach them social skills if you don't let them talk? And I also we have an administrator who greatly supports us and truly understands what little people need to learn. So I don't feel like I have to, my door is actually wide open all day long, and if you come in while we're playing, that's okay. So what I've asked for the grant, or use the grant money for, is it's the play materials, and the most basic is blocks. I have a very small set of blocks. Kids love blocks. They love to build. They learn balance. They learn problem solving. They learn how to get along with each other. They search for parts. They negotiate. They work together. Then all of a sudden they bring other things in, and then the little teddy bears are all of a sudden living in the block houses, and the cars are coming up, and it's amazing. And then they write about it, and it's really amazing to see what they do. The other thing I asked for or plan to purchase is Oh my goodness, my brain just went blank. Well, the Ozobots are kind of my last hurrah. So there's 4 different things. So thank you. They're magnetized shapes that you can build with, and kids love magnets. They're just magnets to magnets, huh? And they love to, it's amazing to see what they use them in ways that I never think of. And so providing that building material for them as well. And then another one is a magnetized marble run, and building that on the wall so it's a different surface and a different way. Instead of horizontal, it's more vertical. And then the last thing was the Ozobot robots, which Erin had on there. The little girl had the little iPad with a path, and I haven't, because I don't own them, I don't know exactly how they work. But the most basic is with, and kids are natural colorers, they use markers to make lines, and the robots recognize the colors, and the colors mean different things and makes them do different things. I mean, can you imagine 5-year-olds? Well, hopefully don't write on the wall. But can you imagine? I mean, I just think it'll be really exciting. And we'll get our iPads as well. And so there is an iPad component to those robots where there's some coding and some more difficult things. But we'll start simple with colored lines and then move into more difficult things. And another thing Erica and I'd like to do at our school, because we're in a our school's kind of weird. It's built in these different stages, and we happen to be on the 2nd story in kind of a, nobody goes up there kind of place. And but we want to eventually maybe do some sort of a STEM Friday and have share our kids and somehow get the other teachers on board. And I think they're on board. It's just they're scared, or and it's more, I think, time too. And we feel this need to get all this stuff in, and how are we going to make time for this? But we figure you can spare this much time on a Friday, and it's really not sparing when you really look at what the problem solving, the social skills, the negotiation, all those things that they need to be successful in life that they're getting through play. So that's what I plan to do.
You've kind of showed us, right? Do you have more? Okay, you're good. She showed us pictorially what she's doing. So January, I want to talk to you for a minute. So in online school, this is an up-and-coming prevalent way that kids are learning. And it's funded by public school systems, and there's a lot of them popping up. So we haven't quite cracked the nut yet, but how can we make that more of a creative experience that's engaging when you're teaching through a screen? What are some of the things you do?
So one thing, I think, was it maybe DJ that said this? That really resonated with me was the idea that we are teaching kids. I teach high school, so I'm in a bit of a different audience than the really little kids. And so, we're not playing with blocks, but when you said we're preparing kids for careers that don't even exist yet, how do you prepare kids to graduate from high school to be ready to do things that we can't even imagine what they are? So, 20 years ago, we didn't. Anyway, I won't go through all the examples again, but we don't know what the future holds for these kids, so we need to teach them to solve problems and be critical thinkers and all these kinds of things. So I think with online school and with high schoolers, it's a different kind of, we need to teach them to be critical thinkers. And one thing about high schoolers, they may not want to play with blocks, but they love to argue. They want to be right. If any of you have any high schoolers at home, they love to be right. They love to argue. We let them talk to each other. We let them argue with each other. We let them prove their point. We ask open-ended questions. I'm thinking to a literature class I taught this year, and for their research paper, instead of, pick one of these topics and you're going to research it and you're going to regurgitate all the information, it was, what's the state of the American dream? Is the American dream dead? Is the American dream alive? What is it? How do you know? Prove it. And so they had to go find information, and then they got to get together online, and they got to give their research and prove their point and argue with each other and say, no, I think you're wrong. This is why. No, I think the American dream still exists. Here's why. And it's a really, as the teacher, I don't intervene in their discussions because I don't know the answer. And I tell them that. I don't know the state of America. What do you think? Prove it. And so we try to do a lot of that. Let the kids come up with their own answers, and also knowing that they're on these computers all day long. So they work from home. They need to create their own learning environment. So there's a lot of autonomy and a lot of it takes a lot of skill to be a successful online high school student, and just helping them navigate the world of information and the world of simply, how are you going to schedule your day? You know, you've got 6 classes, you have this much work to do, how are you going to schedule that? And just helping them navigate through that, and you know, letting them come up with, again, answers to the problems, but these are, you know, they're individual problems. They need to focus. How are you going to do it? Have you thought about this? Well, how's that working? Let's check back in a couple weeks, see if that's working. So it's a lot different than the hands-on play that a lot of you have been talking about. But you know, and then there's always new technologies that are coming out. I've been doing this. This is my 8th year, and when we started, it was a lot of multiple choice tests, you know, and a lot of, we're reading stuff, but it's on the computer, and we're taking tests on the computer, so it's online, and it's very exciting, and we've come a long way since then, and there's always new technologies coming out that allow kids to interact, you know, real time, online. They can collaborate on documents on time, see each other's edits, you know, work together on research, video themselves, show it in class, work in small groups. You know, they can do all these things, and it's just a matter of us, you know, creating these online spaces for them to be able to do these things, and giving them, again, these kind of big parameters so that they can sort of create their own answers to these big questions. Thank you.
Okay, Kevin and DJ, if you guys could come back up. We're just going to open the floor for questions. Hopefully answers, but that's up to you guys. So let's get you chairs. Let me grab 2 chairs. Oh. They're problem solvers. So any questions? Of course, we have a few questions ready, but would love to hear from any of you.
Kevin, I had just a minute to talk to you, but I wanted to know more. Your statement about what you noticed about the state of education, the way we view education and learning in the Seattle area. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Well, it's kind of odd because this is a progressive place. You've got a lot of deep thinkers, but it's almost like there's a collective head in the sand mindset in this area. You've got some serious education deficits. The lost, the last, the least of us, so to speak, are in dire straits. It's almost like people don't even, you know, it's out of sight, out of mind. And with all the innovations and advances you have here and the amazing thinkers, it's frankly surprising how little engagement there is to change the dynamic for so many kids in this city. I was where there's an amazing renaissance, I think I told you this, for change happenings in the South. I was at a rally in Birmingham, Alabama, where 3,000 people showed up. You had pastors from the Black Belt, and you know, you had folks of all shades wanting change. I've seen it in Mississippi, Louisiana. And you just don't have the same energy here. I don't know why that is. I don't have the answers, but it is so clear to me that the status quo has a lot more impact here than it should. And people will say to me, because if they look at me or Google me, you know, all right, he's this or he's that. What I am more than anything is a kids guy. And the only thing, I said this to Maria, the only thing that keeps me up at night is knowing that tomorrow morning a kid's going to wake up and go to a school that doesn't serve them well, and we're okay with that. I'm not okay with that. I don't think any American should be okay with that. And I think that there are more people okay with that here than what there should be. That's my impression.
Here, I feel like I'm the scariest person in the room because I'm a parent. But I will not jump on you. But I wanted to talk a bit about that because when we were going through the preschool experience, we didn't feel like we were the scary ones. We didn't feel like we had a plan B. If we were both working parents, I mean, if our kid was sick, it was a bad day for us. We did not have a plan B. If we couldn't jump on anyone because if they kicked us out, what were we going to do? What were we going to do? So there's a lot of and there are working class parents who have it even harder. But I can see it from a teacher's point of view as well. I'm not. It's more of an observation than it is a question. But I wanted to leave with that.
I actually have a question for each of you, but I hate microphones. Sorry. So Kevin, question for you. You're talking about the individual learning experience, and I'm wondering what's the maximum number of kids that you can have for one teacher going around acting as a coach? Because we've got a whole bunch of talk in Washington in particular about class size and about how we can actually make things. Is it possible to have the kind of innovation that you're talking about if you got 26, 27 kids in a class? And if so, how do you organize that?
I think the short answer is yes. I think class size is important, but the quality of what goes on in the classroom, if you have great teachers, they can handle 25 or 30 kids just as well as some can handle 10. And what I've seen and I mentioned Lindsay, because I think January was talking about the blended learning. They utilize online learning quite a bit. And what the principals of the various schools in the Lindsay School District told me, as well as the sort of mentor teachers, they have this hybrid, I won't call them master teachers, but there's big peer encouragement and support and mentoring going on. It's hard stuff. And these teachers know that. I'm not a teacher. I don't even play one on TV. Y'all, but it's hard stuff. And I think the only way you can master that, classes those size, is through the constant coaching, reinforcement, support, mentoring. I saw it. I saw a classroom, maybe 30 kids, and, since these kids all had their own individual plan, and remember now, these kids were in high school where I saw this large classroom, and they had been sort of weaned on this system for several years, so they just knew they had their sheet for each class, and they knew that they could work in groups, they could go online. Now I do think that there's an important aspect I left out. I'm glad you raised this because I wanted to say this. Because of the challenges of poverty and the challenges, the trauma that a lot of kids in poverty receive every day, and the impact that has on a classroom, you can't have, 30, 35 kids in a classroom who are just totally trauma-induced with the one teacher who isn't trained in dealing with that population. So what they did in Lindsay, because of they had gangs before and trauma and all that, they have Healthy Start on each of their campuses. They have social workers and nurses and counselors. So they have an overabundance of the support on the social services side on site than most other places. So it helps those teachers. If there's a real problem, and teacher gave me an example, so-and-so, his parents, he's been physically abused, parents issue, blah, 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 blah. So when there's an issue, I can just, go around the corner, get someone, they'll pull them out, and they'll deal with it. So I think that the only way you can handle the large class sizes, particularly in some of the most challenged communities, is to have that assortment of services to help. Because I think that's when it flows more seamlessly.
Do any of the teachers want to take a step? At that too.
I'll just say a couple things. You're right, it's an incredibly difficult job. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said the support systems. Most of us, I think, would agree, we fly solo most of the time. We have a few people in the school that we can go to ask for help, but they're so busy. There's so many kids, there's so many things to do that you don't get the immediate help that you need. So I think that's a huge piece of it. We got to have more support in place for our teachers. The other part for me, at least when I was in the public schools, like, you know, I could manage my 27 kids. I had them pretty independent as well. But the time that I was taking to give assessments, to grade papers, to enter data on the computers to send down to the district so they could track what the kids were doing and what letter they were reading at this month, and that took up 90% of my time. So then I wasn't able to really plan for that environment that I really wanted to have, and I think we probably all kind of feel that way, is our time as teachers are spent in staff meetings, in IEP meetings, in 504 meetings, in ELL meetings, in parent meetings. We're grading papers until, you know, all hours of the night, and then inputting it into the computer system and giving assessments. And I mean, the things that are asked of the teachers are so great that we oftentimes don't even have the time to deal with the kids in the way that we want to. And so most of us feel like, okay, we could manage. We could probably manage if we had some more support systems and we didn't have all the stuff that wasn't really teaching the kids. I think that was one of my biggest frustrations as a teacher.
I've had a class of 33 before, 33 fifth graders. That was really fun in the springtime, really fun and smelly. But I think that allowing teachers to have time at the beginning of the year to foster an environment in which children know how to support each other, so that we're not the only one in the room as the teacher, but they are able to teach each other. If they're masters of a domain, giving them that role and responsibility, they thrive on that. And so giving teachers that time and not pushing those assessments so quickly as the be-all, end-all, and giving them that time for the whole child's social, emotional well-being will get 33 fifth graders farther in the end than one would think possible. And I've seen it done with 33 and having kids that are lower and being able to work on those small groups with those kids, and then those other ones that are at fifth grade doing high school algebra are able to work together. I had 2 that year, luckily, able to work together. And so allowing them to be masters of their own education and take ownership of that is, I think, the key.
I just want to add on to what you said is it's really up to the teacher to set that standard for their classroom and expectations for kids from the beginning. And it takes time to teach kids. I think about my own kids going to like Montessori preschool, and they spend, you think about kids in preschool, they spend a long time learning how to line up, you know, but it's important. And then that opens up time later on for, you know, we're not spending all year 15 minutes lining up to go to recess. At some point, kids just line up because they know it's expected, but it takes a lot of time at the beginning to set up those protocols and get everyone on board. And, you know, you tell the kids, hey, we're doing this so that you guys can learn where you need to be, so that you're not doing stuff that is boring for you and you're not. But I think it takes a time investment, and it takes the right, like, attitude from the teacher, and to get everyone to kind of work together on creating that culture, so that then, you know, it's not going to happen in the first month of school where you're going to have kids all politely working in groups at their own level, but you build up to that, because you have to teach kids how to work independently and how to work together, and yeah. It's doable.
This was a great question. You brought in a lot. That was part 1. So there's so many areas, there's so many answers. And I think that listening to what everybody said is telling us the holistic component of how to make this work. But the question I think you were asking also includes, how do you get these children to be interested enough to be involved in what they're doing? And one of the keys that when January said her comment about teaching children the protocol, I think that taking that kind of time also to find out what it is that interests the children. Because you can teach any standard in any way, as long as it's something that is interesting and relevant and maybe a little bit challenging, but also achievable. These are the steps that it takes in order to teach them. So I think sometimes we think, oh, 35 kids is just so many kids. We call it divide and conquer in our school, and we separate them by the things that they want to do, and then I'm only working with this group when they have a question, because the rest of the time they're passionate doing something else. So it doesn't feel like 35. It maybe feels like 8 5 times. That wasn't good math, but I'm in preschool. So.
Can I quickly, what's your name? Jennifer. She prompted something. It's a quick story, but it's really relevant, I think. So Eva Moskowitz, who runs Success Academy in New York, she's a lot of controversy, but she runs an amazing school, and her 6th grade math class has the best test scores in the state of New York. And so, and as she dissected, she has all her teachers on, a Skype call, and the whole network, and they drill down and peer review, and she found, in looking at the numbers, that there was one teacher where, that was really blowing it away. I mean, everyone was at the top 1% or whatever, even kids who had challenges in math 2 or 3 years before. So with the group call, she asked, we want to know, what are you doing? Because we know we have our protocols, we know we have other stuff, but what exactly are you doing? And she said, well, people talk about peer pressure. I believe in peer learning. And I looked at the kids who really knew it, who had high school math, and I said to them, look, I need you to help so-and-so, and if you help them, you'll get 2 extra periods of recess. And so those kids, they just were on a mission. And before you know it, everyone in the class was performing at a super high level because of the reward and incentive associated with also the empowerment associated with having these kids, help one of their fellow students learn. It's a powerful story.
Okay, your turn.
So I'm going to start out with my question and then give you a quick background. My question is, what do we do? Where do we go from here? Because it seems like, so I've been on this journey over the last 10 years of really falling in love with educating, everything you guys are talking about, inspiring kids to be lifelong learners. So for 10 years, my 2 kids have been at an alternative school up in the Edmonds School District. It's a parent partnership. So it's a hybrid of homeschooling and school. And this place is so cool. I mean, they've got like an entire room that's just Legos and robotics. And the kids at kindergarten level, they have a class called Lego Challenge. And they're just presented with different challenges each week. And they go in there and they use their imagination and problem-solving skills and they build. They've got, amazing musical theater, and I actually teach photography and art there, and so it's just this really neat learning environment. Sadly, over the last 10 years, this school has come under more and more pressure to conform. So teachers who 10 years ago weren't spending that much time doing data entry and reporting, and now they're spending more and more and more time. There was a few years ago where we thought they were going to shut us down. And that's just heartbreaking because this school is amazing and it's very unique. So anyways, that kind of going through this experience over the last 10 years with my kids has just caused me to fall in love with educating and just passionate about wanting to find ways where we can just really inspire kids. So I'm actually going to be done in a couple weeks with my teaching certificate. But, you listen to TED Talks, and I have all these podcasts I listen to, and I think, there's a revolution, but then there's not at the same time, And so I just think to myself, well, what do we do? Because I know that teachers are under more and more pressure to teach to the test, you know, and perform all based on this one snapshot assessment and of how their kids did at that one moment, right? And so, and of course you guys all know that because you're teachers. So I just think to myself, well what do we do? Because we're all here because we want to see a change. And so I would just be curious, any of your perspectives on that, because there's a big part of me that feels helpless. It feels almost like what do we do about politics? It's this big machine and we can't fix it. It just does its own thing. And I feel sometimes a little bit that way about the educational, like Kevin was saying, it's been this way for 100 years. And so what do we do? What do we do to actually make those pragmatic changes, not just the TED Talks and all this cool stuff you hear? But anyhow, I'll let you guys take it away.
Okay. I think I'm similar to you in terms of spending 9 years in the public school system and getting frustrated with the pace that things were going at. It's just very slow, and we were talking about that all the way down here. Is sometimes you feel like you're in quicksand with the public school system. You're just constantly trying to move forward, but it's so slow. And I think that's one of the reasons that Maria and I decided to create this foundation, was so that we could get into a few classrooms, make a little bit of a difference, and then hopefully have a ripple effect. I know Colleen, we were talking about how some of the teachers they're a little bit nervous about what she's doing, but they're kind of excited, and they keep coming and peeking in, and they're like, okay, well, if it goes well for you, maybe I'll do it. And that's where the foundation comes in as a support system for Colleen, is helping her create that, and then getting the excitement around it, and then supporting the other teachers. So really, the biggest change that I can see is the grassroots, is starting at the bottom. And it's working with those few teachers that are courageous enough, I applaud all of you, courageous enough to make those change and then open it up and bring more people in. And as a foundation, we can offer those grants, and we can try to just open the eyes of, even if it's just in one school district, that a principal comes in and sees, oh my gosh, look what they're doing, and this is amazing, and their test scores are still good. And they're not teaching to the test? What? I mean, if we can just get one principal to see that, and then they go to a principal meeting, and then they start talking about, well, this one teacher of mine is doing an amazing thing in their classroom, and their test scores are great, and then they all start talking. It's really this just grassroots, let's start from the bottom and go up. That's really our mission, I think, with our foundation. And then it's really hard to go top down. I'll be honest. It's hard to go up to the legislators. It's hard to go up to the Senate. Oftentimes teachers are told, quit whining and just do your job. Because if you start complaining about some of the things that are happening, and I can say this, I'm not affiliated with any school districts or unions anymore, you're told that you're whining. Just quit whining. Do your job. Do what you're supposed to do. And if teachers speak up, we are just kind of, yeah, we've got the politics to take care of. So I found that route as a teacher wasn't making much headway. And so I feel like this is my way of making a difference, and my way of, I don't know, what can we do? I mean, that's the big question.
So I love this question too. This is actually why I wrote my book, because I think that everybody wants something, but they just don't know how to get there. And I think the biggest question for you, and the question to anybody that wants to create change, is what? What is your change? What is your why? Why do you want to do this? This isn't about what you want to do. This isn't about how you're going to do it. Nobody really is questioning in this big picture. They're not questioning the way that you spoke to the children. But what you need to remember, and what we get caught up in, is we think they're questioning our how. But I believe they're questioning our why. And I think that to understand and create a vision for yourself that you believe fully to be the reason that you're doing what you're doing, and then talk about it. This is not something we can do in a vacuum. This is something we do at the grocery store. This is something we do with children over at a play date. This is what we do at a high school party. Not to the kids. We talk about this stuff, and we have to keep your vision clear. It has to be concise, and it has to be backed by some sort of research instead of just our guts. So we were talking about this earlier, is how do you get people to transform? How do you get people to understand what you're doing? And one of the things that I learned the most is this grassroots effort works, but only if the messages that are coming from the people who believe it are clear. They can't be mucked up. They can't be scared. They can't say, well, I do believe that children learn through play, but just in case, I'm going to also do this. It has to be with full conviction. So one of the things I've learned over the years, and there's been many, is that teachers and directors and owners and program administrators don't actually know how children learn. They know how to run a program, they know how to run a school, they know how to make people happy. But unless you truly know what it takes for children to learn, then you don't need to be on this journey. This is a journey for people who get that. And if you don't get that, and with all due respect, get it. Then you can do the preaching, and then you can do the talking, and we can make a change. So I think it's education. I think it starts in grassroots. Figure out who you are, what you want to be, and their why for why you're doing it, and then don't stop talking.
Just something that the whole time they were talking I kept thinking about was, it's not just us as educators being educated, it's also educating parents as to what you're doing and why you're doing it. And talk about the power of social media. You saw this too, because we're friends. We live in a small community. Well, I live in the community. I teach children in my neighborhood. That's how small it is. And so people post stuff on Facebook all the time. And so a couple of nights ago, there was, I have the little kindergartner and the fourth grader was having difficulty with math homework. And so, the mom was more not upset about math. It was more that her daughter was pitching a fit because she was worried about math and just don't stress, just let it go. And so I just said, take a picture, send it to me, maybe I can help. And so just looking at it, but then, of course, social media, everybody chimes in with, this new math, and it's like, okay, let that go. It's not new math. It's still old math. It's just, do you truly understand these? Okay, I teach kindergarten, and I do admit I have a degree in math, but at the same time, I don't remember everything's called. But how numbers work, and how 22 times 16 is really 20 times that kind of thing, and breaking it into smaller, simpler problems. And so I was proud. I did actually help her do her math. I can still do fourth grade math, but that, it's educating. Like when I was talking to the parents the next day, because I have other siblings of other, and they came in and said, thank you so much, and I can't believe you helped her. And I said, well, really, it's just taking this problem and making it a simpler problem. And it really, truly, when kids can do that, it shows that they truly understand the math that they're learning. And so not just saying, it's this new math, or do you hate Common Core? No, it truly is, you're understanding at a deeper level of what you're doing in math, not just, you take this and you multiply the ones, then you carry it and you go over here and then you put a 0 here, because that just shows you can memorize a procedure. So educate parents.
I was just going to say, I don't know how. I think that's the big question, right? But I do think the teachers that want their classrooms to look like this and want their students to learn that way makes all the difference. So people like you that go into teaching because you fell in love with it for 10 years, over the last 10 years or whatever, I think that's the how. But how you get your class, schools full of teachers like that I don't know.
I think we have time for one more question. Anybody? Oh, yeah, part two. Can you say it into the microphone? Yeah.
So I like what you just said about talking to the parents, because if you talk about how you actually want to affect change, where's the problem? Right here. This guy is the problem. And so am I. We're parents. Our kids go to the same school. It's a school in South Seattle. It's a Title I school. It's also I think it's 65% free lunch. It's also a dual language school where half the kids are learning Spanish half the day, half the kids are learning that's right, and half the kids are learning Mandarin half the day. And so for Seattle, this is it's out there. But even then, I'm still wondering,
how are my kids' scores? What are the scores? What are they doing? And it gets back to what you were saying, fear. How are you going to make me less afraid? And if you want to innovate, feel free to innovate, and feel free to do that with somebody else's kids, because I don't want you experimenting with mine. It gets back to, hey, this is a process that has gone on for 100 years. And if we want to change it, that's great. But if you break a few eggs, I just don't want my egg to get broken. And so how are you going to stop that fear?
So nobody wants the first pancake. I understand that. You have to do it over and over again until you get it right. I get that. I don't want to be the first one that a doctor does the surgery on. I get that. But what I do also understand is that if we make ourselves accountable for the work that we're doing, you won't have that question. See, one of the bigger issues that I noticed when we started to create change is that teachers throw the baby out in the bathwater. No offense to you guys, because you're not in the kind of programming I'm thinking about. But in early childhood, when we say, let's let the child learn, the teacher goes, okay, I don't need my lesson book anymore. Well, no, that's not really the case. You still need to know the standards. You still need to know what's required. You still need to know how you know what the children are learning. So there is a level of accountability on behalf of the teacher. If the teacher can articulate what those standards are and how they align with what you're looking for, you wouldn't be scared. But what we have to first figure out is how can we hold ourselves accountable. We can't just say, well, we're going to do it this way, the kids are going to play, and everything will be hunky-dory, and I promise you, just trust me. Okay, that worked for my first couple years in business. It really did. And now after a while, people are like, what do you have to show me? So now we show what we want to make sure the children understand. And we will do it in a different way. We'll get there in a different way. But we make sure and hold ourselves accountable. And that's a very high standard that we must maintain. So I think that in order to relieve fear, we have to share with you what we know. We got to be very transparent. We have to communicate often. You need to get updates. You need to get letters. You need to get pictures. And I know that's more work on behalf of the teachers, but there's also parents who want to volunteer. And if you can find that wonderful person that says, let me volunteer, say, okay, I'm just going to tell you what to write. And you write this once every couple days. And you find the people that can help support the work that you're doing so that you can get that message out as often as possible. And I really do believe it goes down to the relationships you build, the messages that you send, understanding what you want to see happen, and then not stopping. Don't stop until you get there.
I just want to add real quick. We're not experimenting. We know it works. There's science behind it. We know what kids need. And so it might seem to parents like, oh, this is new, this is different, you're experimenting on my kid, I don't want them to fail. But we know that it works. And, like I said, I don't do formal assessments in my kindergarten classroom, and all of my kids are reading, and I don't do direct reading instruction. So it works. We know it does. And so it's a part of educating the parents of the science behind why it works, how it works. And then, like she said, we don't just go, oh, okay, we're going to play, dig in a sandbox today. There's a methodology behind it. So I think that's also a piece of trust, is educating the parents to trust the educators. One thing that we do really well is we trust the educators with our children's physical safety. We know that they are going to jump in front of a gun or a bullet to save their students. What we don't do is we don't trust them with the educational well-being of our kids, which is what they're there for. So I think as a culture, what we need to do is figure out how to get the parents, the community, the legislators to trust us, not only with their physical well-being and their emotional well-being, but their educational well-being as well. So that's what we were trained for. That's what we do. That's what we understand. My bachelor's degree is in child development, birth through age 8. I get kids. We get kids. And so somehow bringing back the trust. And I think that some of the antitrust that has come about is from some of the politics that has happened that are out of our control. What it comes down to is just trusting our schools again, trusting our educators that we know what we're doing. Because we do. So we're not experimenting on kids, although it might seem like it. And I call them my kids. And oftentimes people say, oh, how many kids do you have? And I'll say 20, 15. They are my kids. I cry for them at the end of the school year. Actually, tomorrow is my last day with them, and I'm going to cry. I stay awake at night because I know one of my little kiddos is stressed about something. I'm going to cry right now. We invest our whole hearts into our kids, and I don't want to make you guys cry either, but it's what we do, and we love them as though they're our own, and we celebrate when they're graduating high school, and we cry when they're sad. And so, trust us. That's all I can say.
That group of 33 students that I had, they graduated tonight, and I get the distinct privilege of seeing them come back to our school every year. These kids that I worried so much about, you've come to find out 8 years down the road, they're doing great. And a big part of that is bringing parents in. I want, as a teacher, I want parents to trust me, but I'm also a parent, and I'm scared to death. I'm scared for the same reasons that you are scared, and I don't know why. It's this unreasonable fear that's been put on me. I don't know by who, because I do trust my child's teacher, but I think as a teacher, I need to be communicating with parents as well. This week, we're working on adding fractions. I'm not teaching to a test, but I will know that my students have learned it when we're doing cooking and they're able to double their recipe. And so I know what standards I'm working on, but also communicating that with families so that they're aware of it too, so it doesn't look like experimentation, so that families are it's a fully transparent system, that they know what's going on in my classroom. Feel free to ask questions. Try it at home. And so I think that the fear that parents feel and the fear that teachers feel towards parents, that needs to diminish by having more open communication both ways.
The culture we have now is not a culture that contains a community of learners, but bifurcated boxes where people have their preordained roles. And most school districts, indeed far too many schools, are not teacher-friendly, parent-friendly, and nor are they kid-friendly. And in fact, so many teachers feel like so many parents feel like that they're intruding when they walk in the schoolhouse. It shouldn't be like that if there's a community of learners where everyone's vested in one fiduciary responsibility, making sure that Johnny and Jane are learning and they're happy while they're doing it. And that isn't the culture we have now. Because we've got these boxes, we've got these rules, we've got these regulations, we've got the politicians. There's no Democratic or Republican way to teach a kid how to read, write, or have fun. So I think that accountability is important. I think transparency is important. That's why I talk about let's lift up models that work. Because people don't know what they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. I don't know what I don't know. But I know one thing. I've learned so much. Every day I visit a school, I learn something. Wow, you can do that. And people... Schools, teachers have to make parents feel like they're a part of that community. Bring them in. Sit on a class and sit down with Johnny and Jane and you see if you can make that robot move. And you know what? Before you know it, everyone is vested in it. Now, and it's not, as she said, it's not experimentation when you debunk the fear through the experiential learning that you're sharing with your children or that you're observing yourself. And we had these low-income mothers in Louisiana that kids got scholarships, and to a person, they all were so happy. They had a reception for some of us who got it started, including the legislators that helped push it. These 20 low-income, mainly African-American women in New Orleans had a reception. And they all said they hated school because that was all they knew. But each of them said to a person, they didn't know learning could be like this. And 7 of those women went back to get their GED inside of a couple years. And so we've got to destroy those artificial boxes between stakeholders. That's the only way it's going to work. And I would suggest that you have these candidates. If you're in a school that you think is a good school, and your kid has a teacher that you think is a good teacher, you sit down and you talk about this. I don't want to hear about test scores. I want to understand what your approach is to learning, to teaching my kid how to think. I want to understand what your approach is to getting my child to solve problems. I want to understand how I can be a part of this and feel comfortable. And if they look at you funny, like you're an alien from another planet, you shouldn't have your kid in that school. But I think that's, you ask, how do we change this? We've got to expand ourselves beyond ourselves in terms of what we know or think we know about learning, because what we think we know and what we've learned in the past about how people learn and the best way they get educated, that's all 1800 stuff. We got to divorce ourselves from ourselves to move the ball forward for our kids. And I think, you know, if I could say one final thing, you have to think beyond the surface to make sure your child is learning, and then find out if the caretakers that your kids are with 6 or 8 hours a day share that vision. If they don't, then at some point, it may not be this teacher in this classroom, but sometime down the road, if that school isn't malleable enough to figure out a way to make sure your child's getting what they deserve, at some point there's going to be a challenge. That's been our experience.
Thank you so much, all of you. Did you have a final thing to say? No? Good? Okay. So thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. We all appreciate it. And thank you to our teachers and to Kevin and DJ for coming all this way to spend the evening with us. So follow us on Facebook. We will be posting snippets of tonight's presentation and trying to get it out in the world. We have several media outlets super interested, and the best way we can do that is show them momentum. So our URL is ideasignited.us. Our Facebook page is listed out there, and Kevin has one as well. What's it titled? Changing the Culture of Learning in America. And we will link to his site also. So thank you. Have a good night.